guys, before I get started reading Pickman's model, a quick note. We're actually only reading the last half of the story. So I want to give you an idea of what we've missed up to this point. The narrator is explaining to a character named Elliot about an artist whose name is Pickman. And the narrator was given a tour through Pickman's house of all of his work. And Pickman is known for his really gruesome portraits of really scary creatures. So where we start reading is in the middle of this conversation that the narrator is having with Elliot, explaining to Elliot what he saw in Pickman's house. Pickman's Model by H.P. Lovecraft. Pickman's morbid art was mostly of demonic portraiture. His figures were not human, but often approached humanity in varying degree. Most of the bodies walked on two legs, but had forward, slumping, and canine-like bodies. The texture of the majority was a kind of unpleasant rubberiness. Ugh, I can see them now. Their occupations, well, don't ask me to be too precise. They were usually feeding, I won't say on what. They were sometimes shown in groups in cemeteries or underground passages, and often appeared to be in battle over their prey. And what expressions Pickman sometimes gave the faces of his subjects. It was the faces, Elliot, those accursed faces that leered and slavered out of the canvas with the very breath of life. By God, man, I believe they were alive. He had turned to life the fires of hell in paint, and his brush had been a nightmare-creating wand. Pickman lit a lamp in an adjoining room and was politely holding open the door for me, asking if I would care to follow him to see his modern studies. I'm middle-aged and decently sophisticated. I'm not easily frightened. I'd just about gotten used to his frightful pictures in the room before. However, that next room forced a real scream out of me, and I had to clutch at the doorway to keep from keeling over. The other chamber had shown a pack of ghouls and witches overrunning the world long ago. But this one brought the horror right to our own daily life. God, how that man could paint. There was a painting called Subway Accident, in which a flock of the vile monsters were clambering up from below ground through a crack in the floor of the Boston Street subway and attacking a crowd of people on the platform. Then there was a number with monsters creeping into buildings through holes and rifts in the bricks and grinning as they waited for their first victim. As I gradually steadied myself and adjusted to the second room of deviltry and morbidity, my host was now leading the way down the cellar to his actual studio, and I braced myself for some hellish efforts among the unfinished canvases. I shivered slightly, then turned to follow him up a step and through a narrow door into a room of fair size, provided with a wooden floor and furnished as a studio. The unfinished pictures on easels or propped against the walls were as ghastly as the finished ones upstairs and showed the painstaking methods of the artist. Scenes were blocked out with extreme care, and penciled guidelines told of the minute exactitude which Pickman used in getting the right perspective and proportions. A large camera on the table excited my notice, and Pickman told me that he used it in taking scenes for backgrounds so that he might paint them from photographs in the studio instead of carting his outfit around the town for this or that view. There was something very disturbing about the nauseous sketches and half-finished monstrosities that leered round from every side of the room, and when Pickman suddenly unveiled a huge canvas on the side away from the light, I could not for my life keep back a loud scream, the second I had admitted that night. It echoed and echoed through the dim rooms. Merciful Creator, Elliot, but I don't know how much was real and how much was feverish fancy. It was a colossal and nameless blasphemy with glaring red eyes, and it held in bony claws a thing that had been a man, gnawing at the head as a child nibbles at a stick of candy. Its position was a kind of crouch, and as one looked, one felt that at any moment it might drop its present prey and seek a juicier morsel. Damn it all, the fiendish subject had a dog face with pointed ears, bloodshot eyes, flat nose, and drooling lips. It had scaly claws and half-hooved feet, and its technique, Elliot, the cursed, impious, the unnatural technique. As I'm a living being, I never elsewhere saw the actual breath of life so fused into a canvas. The monster was there. It glared and gnawed and gnawed and glared, and I knew that only a suspension of nature's laws could ever let a man paint a thing like that without a model, without some glimpse of the netherworld. Pinned with a thumbtack to a vacant part of the canvas was a piece of paper now badly curled up, probably, I thought, a photograph from which Pickman meant to paint a background as hideous as the nightmare it was to enhance. I reached out to uncurl and look at it, when suddenly I saw Pickman start as if shot. He had been listening with peculiar intensity ever since my shocked scream had waked unaccustomed echoes in the dark cellar. And now he seemed struck with fright. He drew a revolver, motioned me to silence, stepped out into the main cellar, and closed the door behind him. I think I was paralyzed for an instant, imitating Pickman's listening. I thought I heard a faint scurrying sound somewhere, and a series of squeals or beats in a direction I couldn't determine. I thought of huge rats and shuddered. Then there came a subdued sort of clatter. It was like heavy wood falling on stone or brick. Wood on brick. What did that make me think of? It came again and louder, then suddenly a sharp grating noise, a shouting gibberish from Pickman, and the deafening discharge of all 6 chambers of a revolver, fired spectacularly as a lion tamer might fire in the air for effect. A muffled squealer squawk and a thud. Silence for a fearful moment, broken finally by more wood and brick grating, a pause, and then a slow opening of the door. Pickman reappeared with his smoking weapon, cursing the bloated rats that infested the ancient wall. Well, Elliot, that was the end of the night's adventure. Pickman had promised to show me the place, and heaven knows he had done it. I never spoke to him again. Why did I drop him? No, it wasn't the paintings I saw in that place. It was something I found in my coat the next morning. You know, the curled-up paper tacked to the frightful canvas in the cellar. The thing I thought was a photograph of some scene he meant to use as a background for that monster. It seems, in a fright, I had mindlessly crumpled it into my pocket. Yes, that paper was the reason I dropped Pickman. Richard Upton Pickman, the greatest artist I have ever known, and the foulest being that ever leaped the bounds of life into the pits of myth and madness. He wasn't strictly human. Either he was born in a strange shadow, or he'd found a way to unlock the forbidden gate. You know how damned lifelike Pickman's paintings were. How we all wondered where he got those faces. Well, that paper wasn't a photograph of any background after all. What it showed was simply the monstrous being he was painting on that awful canvas. It was the model he was using. And its background was merely the wall of the cellar studio in minute detail. But by God, Elliot, it was a photograph from life.